The Chinese Premier wakes up in Canberra this morning and will continue his trip of Australia today, where he's talked up the stabilised relationship. Joining us live now is the Hudson Institute Senior Fellow, John Li. John, it's good to see you as always. So the Premier is talking up stabilisation, or likes to. Is he right?
Well, what I find quite strange, Australia and Prime Minister Albanese is the host, but the Chinese Premier has been able to define and dominate the narrative. And the narrative, as far as I can see, is China has forgiven Australia for past transgression. China likes the direction Australia is going. And as a result, China will normalise things with Australia. Now, we know that's really not a very accurate reading of recent history. But there you go. The Chinese Premier has taken a lead in defining what this trip is about.
So it's a pride thing. You know, it's them or China allowing this. It's not the changes that Australia has made here.
Yes, it is faced, but it's much more than that, because the narrative matters. Because what China wants from Australia, it knows Australia is not going to walk back on AUKUS or some of our key policies, but it wants a more passive, submissive Australia. So if you think back to why China was so enraged with particularly the Morrison government, it was because the Morrison government was very successful at leading international and regional coalitions to put pressure on China. Whether that's Taiwan, whether that's China's trade practices, cyber, foreign interference, and so on. The Albanese government has chosen not to do that. Yes, it's discussing things with China, but that doesn't change Chinese behaviour. In my view, only collective pressure does, and that's not a direction that the Albanese government has taken, but it means that China will offer us more stable relations, but the pressure on China is less than it was before.
With those meetings in Canberra today, John, do recent defence incidents, are they the elephants in the room?
Well, they will be raised, and I think Prime Minister Albanese and his ministers have been pressured in a sense to raise them. But it's not just the mere raising of them that gets you a solution. You have to do the hard work before of getting international partners to coordinate with you and put pressure before these meetings take place. And as I mentioned, the Albanese government has been reluctant to do that because it doesn't want to magnify the differences with China for this stabilisation project. So my summary is that, yes, the discussions will be more cordial, even though these things will be raised, but the pressure on China will not be as great.
And Yang Hengjun, the writer detained in China at the moment, does anything come out of that? Does that get raised as well?
It may get raised, but just raising something doesn't change it. You really have to make it into a more sustained campaign, which I don't think the Albanese government has done. If you look at that case, if you look at human rights, you look at the issue of Taiwan, these difficult issues have not really been pursued by the current Australian government, and hence, therefore, I really don't think China feels under any great compulsion to do anything different.
So yeah, I mean, and that's the same with Taiwan. It's not going to stop its plans on Taiwan because Australia says so.
No, and look, Australia obviously can't change the military balance in Taiwan, but it can get other countries to take the issue of deterrence of China over Taiwan more seriously. Now, to do that, Australia may well suffer some kind of diplomatic slap by the Chinese, but if we don't do it, then we're really not part of that regional solution.
So what comes out, what's the overriding plus that comes out of this visit by the Chinese Premier? What do they get out of this?
Well, the plus or minus, depending on where you sit, will be, yes, you'll have a normalisation of trade, and trade may increase more than it has been for the last few years. In fact, it will increase more than it has been for the last few years. But remember, China has never stepped away from using economic coercion as a tool of statecraft. It has never said it won't do that again. And remember what we used to talk about not so long ago. We wanted more resilience. We wanted to diversify. That's actually not the message that the current government is giving to Australian businesses. It's saying we've stabilised, jump back into China. So from depending on where you sit, if you want to sell more things to China in the short term, it's good news. But if you're actually trying to build some level of resilience and decrease the leverage that China has over you in the future, I'm not quite sure we're moving in the right direction.
All right, John Lee out of Washington, DC for us today. Thank you, John.